Bionicle Warfare is modern warfare, and if you know anything about modern warfare, you know that's really, really bad. Let me explain. You see, modern warfare has a few aspects that set it apart from World War II style or even Vietnam style warfare. And I'm not talking about the game here, I'm talking about the real life principles that govern combat and warfare as we know it. The first and most important is the ability to inflict mass destruction. Prominent examples being nuclear bombs and gas attacks. This capability ensures no wars are fought in large formations like you'd see in medieval style combat, since all that manpower can be destroyed with relatively little investment and with no chance of retaliation. And you better believe Bionicle can inflict mass destruction. The second aspect is the ability to deploy force with precision and variable output, meaning you can hit a relatively small target with a pre-planned percent of your destructive might. Think being able to send a missile into a specific building rather than nuking a whole city. This makes accomplishing strategic assassination or sabotage much, much easier. And the main counter to this capability is in the form of the third aspect of modern warfare: information. Because when your enemy can destroy large or small targets with precision, the best defense is keeping information about the target away from your enemies. That's why an obscure hole-in-the-ground bunker is a more effective defense in modern warfare than a castle would be. Because without this crucial defense, at pretty much any time, from anywhere, a missile, a bomb, a pathogen, or even a sniper has the capability to eliminate crucial targets in just a few seconds and with no trouble at all. So, how does this relate to Bionicle? Well, at a large scale, Bionicle functions on the same three principles. You see, for mass destruction, there are a frightening number of ways that this can be accomplished. The first are the Toa, which all have control over a certain amount of elemental energy that can be used to manipulate, generate, or absorb their associated element. If they ever decide enough is enough though, they can release all that energy at once and decimate anything in a 45-mile radius. That's twice the destructive radius of the Tsar Bomba. And what's crazy is they don't die from this. They're perfectly fine afterwards, and if they wait a few weeks for their energy to recharge, they can do it again. And what's even crazier is that there were 3,000 Toa running around at one time in the Matoran universe. That's insane. And that's just one avenue for their mass destruction potential. The second is heavy-hitting species like those of Brutaka and Axon, who have enough power to destroy buildings in single blows. Or if they have enough time, they can level mountains if they feel like it. That's without mentioning the most physically powerful species in the entire universe, which the character Nocturne belongs to. These guys are so powerful that he hit his island in a weak point, and it literally cracked it in two and broke it all. With one punch, guys. One single punch, and he destroyed an island. That is insane. And that's without mentioning the third common way of mass destruction, and that is genetically engineered monstrosities that can be created with relative ease by many of the Makuta in the universe. These monstrosities include skyscraper-sized kaiju, swarms of intelligent giant spiders, Rakshi, and even diseases and shadow plagues, all on demand for them. So yes, this means there are three extremely common ways that entire cities in the Bionicle universe can be destroyed with relatively no effort and in an extremely short amount of time. This isn't including one-off artifacts like legendary masks that can literally destroy the entire universe. And this problem compounds when you look at the small scale too, because Bionicle's offensive power is way out of whack with their defensive ability. This is true in the human world, as even a single rifle can kill a crazy amount of humans with the proper conditioning, because the destructive output of a rifle is way higher than a human's ability to resist that output, meaning positioning and evasion are the most effective ways to defend against an opponent. Playing into this is the almost universal lack of Hack's resistance, which is slang for any ability that bypasses conventional durability. So for instance, Hakan's Brain Blast is a Hack's ability because it doesn't matter how armored you are, your mind is still going to get melted by it. This is another deterrent for small-scale warfare because a Kanoka disc or Rotuka launcher will work on even the most powerful of beings regardless of how durable they are. meaning no one is truly safe in combat because these are near ubiquitous technologies that are used by vast portions of the Matoran universe, similar to how humans avoid combat because they aren't bulletproof and guns are common. This has led to agility and damage negation powers as the primary form of defense in combat, and this comes in a few flavors. Hiding in terrain that can't be destroyed, either because your opponent needs it intact or it has some special property that literally makes it invincible, is common. Tricking or running from a threat is common because if your opponent can't hit you with their power, they can't deal damage. And in Bionicle, most abilities are fairly short-ranged, so this is an extremely common option. Third is capitulating or cooperating with the opponent. Bargaining or surrendering means your opponent has no reason to attack you, which lets you live another day. And finally, ambushing or assassinating opponents is the preferred form of aggression. With durability being so low, the first hit is crucial in all combat because it can knock out a significant portion of the enemy with no chance of retaliation. With all those factors being explained, this is why mass destruction shapes the way Bionicle views warfare. But there's also the second aspect, which is the variability of output. This aspect will be shorter to talk about because most Bionicle powers are inherent and dictated by the will of the user, so they naturally have a high degree of control over them, meaning almost every feat listed for mass destruction can be scaled down to whatever that character needs to destroy. So for instance, a Makuta could make a tiny Rahi that can do one specific task. A Toa doesn't have to blow up an island, they can instead just glass a single building, or even use it on small scale for technical work. So with that principle being explained, we come to the third principle of why Bionicle is modern warfare and why it is so terrifying: information. The Matoran universe is a very information-sparse place, with a few massively notable outliers. How things generally function is on the same basis as ancient Mesopotamia, where you have eyewitnesses traveling to locations and reciting from memory tales and legends of what they saw. If not that, they're chiseling it down on stone tablets or walls so that it cannot be easily forgotten. Now, this makes a lot of sense because going and seeing things is a common way to experience the world. But if it just stopped there, Bionicle would not have modern warfare and not have modern combat. Because if it was only this, large-scale wars would be more frequent since getting information on targets would be extremely difficult, and the battlefield would be the most common place an opposing army could repel invaders. But the aforementioned outliers change everything. Oh my gosh, do they change everything. Because in Bionicle there are teleporters who can go anywhere at any time with no restriction, and are thus able to obtain and transmit information at rates similar to modern telephones. There's telepathy, which can easily extract information from people whether they like it or not, or rapidly transfer memories from one person to another. There's also knowledge crystals that function like telepathy, but can be interacted with by anyone. You don't have to have a special or unique power. And last but not least, there are many people with stealth abilities that allow for surveillance equivalent to secret cameras being hidden somewhere. Because if there's an invisible guy in your room, there's not much you can do about it unless you know he's there. So these factors mean that those in power have all the tools necessary to deploy small-scale to nuclear-level attacks at nearly anywhere at any time. And that doesn't even mention the built-in horrors of many Bionicle abilities. For example, being forced to live a lifetime in a nightmarish alternate reality, getting teleported to the Shadow Realm, getting stuck in the void between realities, being involuntarily imploded, losing all your free will, getting your mind, body, and soul devoured, having your veins and organs infested with bugs, getting forcefully merged or split apart on a fundamental level, getting each piece of you teleported to a different place, or just being good old-fashioned killed and dismembered. And this is not an extensive list of the horrible ways you can be defeated in Bionicle. So now we are beginning to get the answer of why warfare as we think of it and as it is used in modern times is so rare in the Bionicle universe. Aside from the aforementioned points, there are two other factors that prohibit large-scale warfare. The first is that if too many Matoran die, the entire universe will also die. So limiting civilian casualties and destruction is actually of extremely vital importance. The second is the lifespan of the average Bionicle, which is functionally infinite. So if they don't need something urgently, they can take time to plan, strategize, bargain, gather information, and amass resources. They can scheme and plan for centuries just to ensure the success of their plan with as few casualties as possible. This cuts down on the unpredictability of warfare and lets you know what people you are going to encounter, making it easier to account for their unique power sets. So given all this, sustained battlefronts where both sides desperately need to accomplish one objective in a short amount of time
Mission ends in 10 seconds.
are almost impossible in Bionicle. If one side is trying to deny the other, a simple Nova Blast would finish the entire fight. If another side needs to break through, shock squads, teleportation, or assassination would just be more effective, as it would not invite retaliation on the scale of a nuclear strike. So in short, large, sustained, desperate interspecies conflict cannot happen in Bionicle. It would end too quickly or never begin at all, since it is antithetical to at least one side's objectives. But if we remove one of those modifiers, then warfare is entirely possible, and in fact, fairly common. So, here are the different scenarios in which conflict arises in the Matoran universe. The first is sustained, desperate interspecies conflict. So this results in battles where powers are more evenly matched because the sample size of species is too small for mutants or heavy hitters to be present. If they are present, it's not sustained. So examples of this are the Kanohi Dragon, which took 11 Toa an entire month to contain, or the mini Rahi attacks that we see on the villagers of Matanui. The second category is large, desperate interspecies conflict. This occurs when both sides are not willing to lose an objective. These fights are generally very quick. So examples of this are the Brotherhood of Makuta and Baraki War, which started and ended in less than a day. The Battle of Bara Magma, where Toa were crushing Rakshi by the Legion with their awesome powers, and this again ended in just a few hours. And then there's the Destiny War, which basically was a few skirmishes and a short siege that was ended by divine intervention, as well as the arrival of the Toa Nuva. So you can see as soon as those heavy hitters start coming in, it's over in just a matter of hours. The third scenario where we see conflict is large, sustained interspecies conflict. So this happens when one or both sides don't have the will or resources to effectively fight each other. They're not desperate. So this includes the Makuta Dark Hunter War. This is where the Brotherhood of Makuta took it very casually and devoted almost no resources to actually fighting. And even with this apathy, over 1,000 years of fighting, the Dark Hunters managed to accomplish very little and still took extremely heavy losses. So you can see if the Brotherhood was actually caring that much about the war, it would be over pretty fast. The second example is the Toa Dark Hunter War, which was brutal, months-long street-to-street fighting. And last, but certainly not least, there is the large, sustained, desperate conflict. So these are all civil wars, since they are not interspecies conflicts, and they continue for as long as they do because the powers are equally matched and neither side wants to destroy their home, right? So, the first example is the Civil War on the homeland of Ancient and the Shadowed One, which is very long and very detrimental to their society, but did not cause a great amount of collateral damage or apparently casualties. The second is the Matoran Civil War, which was stopped because no work was getting done and it was going to destroy the universe. It was ended when a heavy-hitting species such as a Makuta came in and just put it all to rest. And then third, the Skakti Civil War, which is currently ongoing and prevents anyone from going to the island, but given that Skakti are not powerful enough to destroy even mountains, the island is still intact, and thus it can sustain itself. So these are all the examples of how warfare is conducted in the Bionicle universe, and why we will never see something like World War II happen in the Bionicle universe, which I hope I made clear and is for very obvious reasons. Partially because it would be horrifying, and no one would have any way to predict what the winner of any battle could ever be. So from the mouth of a former Bionicle warlord, I hope this gives you an idea of why the dream of fielding a massive army and charging it across the universe is a terrible idea, because Bionicle warfare is frighteningly modern, deadly, and horrifying, and oftentimes the only winning move is not to play. As we end this very special episode of the Baraki Talk Show, I would like to shout out Cosmic Cupid Forges for making all these lovely poses of Kalma that I used throughout the video. Make sure to give his channel a watch because he has some really cool projects going on.